Thank you so much for sticking with us here at the DMZ America podcast, coming to you from the left. I am editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
August
Such
14th.
as it is.
August 14th, indeed. August 14th, 2023 is the current tentative date for the beginning of Donald Trump's charges, facing 37 counts of mishandling classified federal documents from the CIA and other sources that he took home with him from after he left the White House and was not supposed to. 31 of those counts is one for each relevant document that is considered important and bad for him to have taken. 6 of those counts is related to him dithering and dragging his feet and fucking around, not returning them. This is a big deal, obviously, Scott, and we teased this in the last segment. I mean, there is, according to legal experts, he'll probably be found guilty on these charges. It's the indictment is very thorough, very detailed, damning. There's accounts of him showing, basically displaying his state of mind, evidencing that he was well aware that what he was doing was wrong. It's not like he forgot and accidentally brought these things home with him and then like, oh shit, I got to return them. He knew that he was supposed to return them. He showed them to buds at Mar-a-Lago and at Bedminster at his golf club in New Jersey. And he said, he was like, oh, I'm not supposed to show you this, but here, step aside, step far away and look from far away. He was apparently took steps to hide documents. He said he didn't want to return them. So he was a dick about it. And anyway, so he'll probably be convicted when this goes to trial, very likely in the middle of the 2024 campaign, either during the Republican primaries and or during the general election. I don't think this will deny him the Republican nomination, no matter what, even if he's found guilty. I think he's solid in the polls, currently polling 51 to 53% in the Real Clear Politics average of national polling for the Republican nomination, well ahead of number 2, Ron DeSantis, currently languishing at about 13, 14%. And then the rest of them are all in the single digits. Yes, we could end up with Asa Hutchinson fever, but somehow I doubt it. So basically then we're talking about an indicted, possibly imprisoned or facing imminent imprisonment presidential candidate for a major political party, facing the incumbent president whose own DOJ prosecuted and convicted him. Oh, what could go wrong?
Oh, whoa. Oh, what could go wrong? By the way, I mean, this is one of those side stories that interest Ted and I to no end. Did you know the Secret Service has already worked out a template as to if this should happen, as you paint the picture that Donald Trump goes to jail, how they're going to have Secret Service protection of him in prison?
I seriously like the fact that they're planning ahead. I'm not even kidding. It speaks highly
but I just think, come on, man. It kills me to think that, first of all, the Secret Service agents, they're on rotation. So it's 24-hour, 24/7 protection. But can you imagine pulling that card? You get to protect the president of the United States. They all saw the movies. They all saw these guys who are super serious wearing dark suits and will be willing to take a bullet for the president of the United States. Oh, wait, I'm going to be stationed where? Rikers? Fuck.
Yeah, I guess he would be sent to.
I signed up for.
He could be sent to a federal prison anywhere in the United States, right? That's how this works.
Yeah, but it's going to be the club fediest of all the club feds. You know that, obviously, and but they're going to have to. I mean, if I was the warden and you were told, "Hey, Ted Rall, you're there in Dayton, Ohio, of the Dayton Federal Facility. We're sending former President Trump to you." Now, do you say, "Okay, I will abide by whatever the Secret Service has structured for his protection. I will bend over backwards to make sure that he does well here," or whatever? Or do you say, "Fuck it, he's another prisoner"? He has to
No,
go through all the.
no, there's no fucking way that he's just another prisoner. There's no, and he can't be Epsteined or anything like that. No, I mean, he's going to be,
Oh no, I don't. I'm not suggesting that.
but I mean, look, honestly, before we get to that point, I mean, I'm not even going to get into just how, speaking of degeneracy in the last segment, um, how degenerate it is for the shining beacon on a hill, for the country that presumes to control the entire Western Hemisphere through the Monroe Doctrine, and that controls the United Nations and purports to tell other countries whether or not they can declare independence and be admitted to the United Nations, and decides who gets to have nuclear weapons or not. That country that considers itself to be exceptionalist to the core, how that country can possibly survive or endure the spectacle of the arrest of not only a eminently former president, just the last president, but on top of that, on ridiculous charges, and on, and during an election year in which he's the presidential, the nominee of a major party. I mean, imagine, Scott, if this were taking place in a randomly selected country. I'm just going to throw it out there, Namibia, and you said, like, oh, the previous president was just arrested by the Namibian authorities. The rival political party is controlling the prosecution. This former guy was the rival opposition candidate, but he's just been imprisoned on charges related to mishandling papers. You would be like, that is a shithole country. And that's what the US becomes automatically by even having gone this far. We've gone way too far. And then or maybe we haven't gone too far, but certainly, whether you think we should do this or not, this does make us a shithole country. And then we can talk about, like, the no man is above the law argument. That's the Democrats. And the problem with that is that lots of men are above the law, like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Even
Hunter
are above the law.
And Hunter.
And Hunter. And so it's not true. And the problem is that, like, the only difference between what, by Democrats' own accounts, the only difference between what Joe Biden did in stealing classified documents and bringing them home with him and what Trump did is that Biden said, oh, my bad, here, come and get them. And Trump didn't. Okay, but that doesn't change anything. That's like sort of if I break into a bank and I steal money, and I guarantee you that it's not going to be a defense to when the cops call and say, hey, Ted, we know you stole $20,000 from the Bank of America. If I say, oh, okay, you're right, come and get the money. You got me. Sorry. They're not going to be like, okay, yeah, don't worry about it, sir. You're good. Okay. I mean, the point is, Trump had documents he wasn't supposed to have. Biden had documents he wasn't supposed to have. The vast majority of the counts that add up to 400 years in prison for Trump relate specifically to those 31 documents. In other words, he'd still be facing 400 years in prison if he didn't dither. And the same charges were filed, the ones that were pertinent to not dithering. So that's just that's just a bullshit talking point on the part of Democrats. And you've got and then I'm terrified of the 70 plus million people who voted for Donald Trump, who love him, right? He's not just a guy they voted for, who they held their nose and thought, lesser of two evils. This is not like, voting for Joe Biden, where you don't really care what happens to him. This is like, they love him. He's like Teddy Roosevelt. He's like, he's like FDR. He's like JFK. He's important to them. And they're being told in the middle of an election campaign, oh yeah, that guy you're voting for, in our two-party system, we're putting him in prison. Guess what? It's a one-party system now. A two-party system is a simulacrum of democracy. A one-party system is no democracy.
So what do you suggest here, Ted? I mean, he clearly is guilty of. I mean, he's okay. He's allegedly innocent, allegedly guilty, but he's guilty of this stuff.
He's guilty.
So what are you suggesting? That he is above the law? He
never ought to have been charged. Okay, that's what I'm first and foremost saying. I'm saying that first of all, like Democrats, according to the Washington Post just did a report where they said that they're now looking, the DOJ is considering filing charges against Trump for January 6th and inciting a riot, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't start even looking into it for a year after January 6th. So now they're in an election year. So it's like, so dick beans, you should have fucking done it earlier or waited till after the election. But you're literally doing, I mean, it is election interference to an extreme. So then don't charge him now. And now that you've charged him now, like fucking idiots, now, okay, well, what are you going to do? You have to get yourself out of this mess that you made yourself. Well, okay, give the guy a plea. I wrote that in my column last week. Give him a plea bargain. Like, no prison time. Don't try to say that he can't run for office again. I don't know, by the way, you would know this. Was former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich banned from running for public office? Or is that because of the law in Illinois, or was that specific to him being released or whatever?
No, I mean, that was when he was convicted. That was one of the provisions, is he could not run again for public office.
Okay, so the point is, I don't think there should be a provision like that, because look, I don't care about Donald Trump. He deserves to go to prison for other reasons. Like, he deserves that for the Central Park Five by itself. But like, this is about disenfranchising half the voters, which Democrats seem to think is fine. And like, I guarantee you it's not fine. And so like, let him run, let him win or lose, keep him out of prison, make him pay a fuck ton of money, make him pay most of his money, make him pay almost all of his money. He's supposedly worth $2.5 billion. Take $2 billion. Hey, you'll have to make do with $500 million. Sucks to be you. Sell Mar-a-Lago, whatever. I mean, the point is, that's the solution here. Let him walk free. Do not, give him the Hunter Biden treatment.
Well, that's what I was just about to say, is that given our earlier segment, let him plea out. Does Trump plea out? Because he's paid fines and stuff. He's not afraid to take a plea, right?
I don't think he's ever pled out, but he's certainly negotiated settlements. I mean, bear in mind, he's never faced criminal charges before. This is the first.
I don't know about
the Manhattan DA is the first time that he ever faced criminal charges.
Oh, well, then the answer would be no.
And people say he wouldn't take it, but he would take it if it boiled down to, if he knew he was going to prison otherwise.
Well, I do believe that. I see your point. I absolutely see your point, crystal clear. I think this has a lot of validity. But
it's a political argument, not a legal argument.
Right. But here's the other thing, is how political is this? This is a Justice Department. And by the way, talking to my liberal friend yesterday, my liberal Democrat friend, Ed, who said, it's not the Justice Department. It's a special prosecutor. No, it's the Justice Department who has to bring the charges. Mm-hmm. This is the Biden Justice Department bringing charges against a political opponent. We've never seen this before. You touched on this before we dove out of the last segment, and you're absolutely right. Here's the thing. Here's what's weird where we are, people. America is in a great place from a practical standpoint. The economy is good. Inflation is coming down. We're at peace. Things are pretty damn good right now. Employment is up, up, up. But I still share Ted's angst that there is something very terrible happening to this country. And maybe this is how it happens. Maybe this is how the American experiment ends. If Donald Trump is elected, it's going to be 4 years of vendetta, and it's going to be ugly. But if Biden gets reelected, it's not going to be a lot worse, because they've weaponized the Justice Department. So the next guy who's in there, or gal, or both, they could,
or neither.
They could be fluid, gender fluid. Whoever is the next president this sets a precedent. That's why I talked about when they were impeaching Trump. When they impeach, you don't make that you don't you don't belittle it. You don't make that a little thing, and it has now become a little thing. If the Republicans in the House have a slightly bigger majority, they're going to impeach Biden at some point, and they're sent it to the Senate where it's not going to go anywhere. Impeachment is a big deal, and we've diminished it to the point where it's what we do to our political opponents. What Biden has done and what the Justice Department has done, which is terrifying, is that they have made this type of prosecution of political opponents commonplace, and you're going to see it more and more.
Yep.
And
that's true
Ted,
too.
This is
if the republic survives, which it very well may not.
Well, how can it not? I mean, what happens? I mean, in all
Civil War.
Who fights who? Who
red
shoots
versus
who?
blue? Secession.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we've seen that before.
Well, I mean, and frankly, I think it's pretty clear that red and blue America have decided that they don't want to live together. I mean, red America wants to be a Christian, anti-trans, anti-homophobic, pro-life kind of place where there's good brisket. And blue America wants to be not those things. And so, yeah, it's like that we're not like looking at each other as charming cousins anymore. We're looking at each other as like, we're dehumanizing each other as like pieces of shit who are dangerous to everything that we care about. And I don't know. I mean, I could easily see, come on, you could see Ron DeSantis leading the secession of the Floridas, as it used to be called, and just saying like, look, we don't want to, hear that this is where woke goes to die. We're anti-lockdown, anti-COVID bullshit. During the troubles, you could come here and soak up the sun mask free. It's a beautiful thing. We're going to do our own thing from now on. We're out. And I could see Floridians backing that. He's a very popular guy. He'd be the king of Floridians. Probably might think, we could be a viable country. We have an economic base. Yeah, half the state's going to be underwater soon, but we drink a lot, so we might not notice that. So, you know what I mean?
That's interesting. I think more to the point, actually, in the short term, Texas, which has in their constitution, ratified by the Congress of the United States, they can secede. If they get pissed off, they can break into four pieces, and those four pieces can secede. I could see that happening. I could definitely see Ohio seceding. That's a red state now. And I could see them saying, fuck the East Coast. Fuck them calling us flyover country. They don't have an economy to base anything on, so they'd have to, be
that didn't stop them last time.
No, Ohio didn't really secede from anybody, but the South did. The South had,
that's what I mean.
The South kind of went on. What's weird about the South secession is they kind of went on. There was kind of nostalgic because they said, back in the day, back when we declared independence, we were the economic power in this country, and they were until they weren't.
Right.
And then they still thought we're still an economic power. Anyway, yeah, I could see California, Oregon, parts of Washington were seceding on its own, saying, we want to be.
Well, that would be under a Republican president, under like a renewed Trump presidency. After a restoration, I could see that happening. I think.
I just thought I got good.
Also, there's just a shit ton of major random political violence, like a spasm, like in 1968, like a lot of assassinations, massacres, mass shootings. You have a rally, some sort of political rally of one side or the other, and angry partisans of the opposite go and resort to violence. And look, let's get real here. It's a cliche because it's true. Conservatives have more guns than liberals. Liberals have more guns than you think, but Republicans have more. And they would be likelier, I think, historically, we know they'd be likelier to go after people on the left. I mean, I think, that's going to be the bare minimum. I mean, look, the truth is effectively, you can't say, I mean, what am I missing here, Scott? You can't say you're a democracy. America is not a democracy now, but people think it is. They won't think it is after Trump is in jail in the middle of an election. They just won't. I mean, if you said, like, let's go back at an election, let's just say Clinton versus Bob Dole, 1996, and you said, oh, in an alternate history, Bob Dole was imprisoned in July of 1996. And then America went to the polls and elected the only candidate who wasn't in prison, Bill Clinton. You would say democracy ended then. That was the end, right? Wouldn't you?
I gotta be honest with you, Ted. The analogy you had just earlier about Namibia, which by the way has an awesome flag. Check it out.
Okay, I will.
But describing that, the former president has been arrested and is being charged with, having pieces of paper. I know you've dismissed that, but the documents are a little more important than that. But I don't think
Let's just
much
say secret papers. Let's say that.
Let's just say, and the papers that probably shouldn't have been secret, by the way. You and I agree on that.
99% of them, I'm sure.
But, I mean, when you made that analogy, you made that, I got to tell you, Ted, it made me my brain just stopped in its tracks and went, fuck, fuckity, fuckity, fuck. He's right. It sounds like a third world country. And, if you heard something like this coming from Paraguay, you go, well, yeah, it's a shitty little country. Well, of course that shit happens all the time. This is America, folks. And, there's a part of me that believes that no man is above the law, but there's also a part of me that believes that what Jerry Ford did in 1974 by pardoning Richard Nixon, was the right move. And, people are saying, should Biden pardon Trump?
Yes, he should. For years, I've been giving Jerry Ford a hard time, and I was wrong. I mean, now that I'm older and more temperate, I think Ford did what was right for the country.
Yeah, no, and lost the presidency because of that. I mean,
True.
Really, that's at the core of it. That's why he did it, but it was the right thing to do. In this case, I think you're right again. Problem is, I had this discussion with a friend of mine recently about should Biden pardon Trump. I don't think that the Ford pardon was never challenged in court. Yeah, you know this, of course. Because both the Democrats and Republicans said, okay, enough's enough.
But what basis would there have been to challenge the constitutionally protected right of a president to pardon?
Because the pardon was so sweeping. And I mean, it was just like, it really was, no matter what Richard Nixon did, forget it.
Even if he decided to kill Pat one night.
Yeah, forget it. It's over. He doesn't, if he did while he was president, then it was, I don't know that Biden, and that if he issued a pardon, it would be contested. It would go to court. And I don't know that he would also have the right.
There's the problem, Scott, of the Manhattan and the Georgia charges that would not be vacated by a presidential pardon.
Right. Well, the Manhattan charges you and I both say are ticky-tacky and bullshit.
They are.
And so
they're kind of tied together with duct tape and baling wire.
Georgia, that's a different story. When you call someone else, when you call someone else and say, "Find me votes," that.
Well, that goes to state of mind, right? I mean, it's sort of like, I think there's a credible defense there. I mean, it actually reminds me a lot of the Blagojevich stuff. It's kind of like, find me votes is not really specific enough. I couldn't vote to convict him on that. I mean, do I think I know what he was up to? Sure, but that's not good enough to send a man to prison. I think remember, this has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. There's a reasonable doubt. I mean, if these were civil charges, I think he'd be facing more jeopardy. It's analogous to the E. Jean Carroll case, where I think there's enough reasonable doubt in that case to drive a truck through. She doesn't even know what year it happened. But that's a civil claim. I think frankly, I don't blame him for appealing. I think he has a strong chance of getting that thrown out of court. But yeah, look, I think so. So I guess that is the question, right? I mean, there's also, I guess, here's the possibility that's maybe more moderate. Like it's not as exciting as civil war or mass political violence, but it could just introduce this, first of all, permanent, as you've said, Scott, permanent lawfare. And then also, like it would, I think, create a level of toxicity in the body politic that would be impossible to ever reverse back away from. I mean, you're going to end up with no one with half a brain will ever want to run for political office, because you'll know that to do so means that people are looking to convict you and send you to prison to get rid of you. And Republicans will always be convinced that election was stolen from them in a way that, they sort of say they think that the election was stolen last time, but this time they'll really truly believe it in their heart of hearts in a way that they didn't before. And that's very, very rough. I mean, I don't know if we can ever, I think the marriage is permanently broken once that happens.
Well, it becomes, this ceases to be a functioning democracy. Let's put it that way. And I think you and I can agree on that.
Yeah.
Coming up on the next, believe it or not, this was the happy segment.
True.
Because coming up next, we've got some sad stuff to talk about.
True.
And
yes,
maybe a way forward. I don't know. We'll see. I'm Scott.
All right.
That's
okay.
Ted.
All right. We'll keep it right here. We'll be right back.